What if I told you that you could filter a table for specific values, insert a new column, add a formula referencing from another tab, copy the result into a new tab, remove duplicates, count unique values, save and close the file without even touching the mouse? In this video, I will show you how you can use keyboard shortcuts to speed up your Excel workflow so that you can become more productive at work. If you're new here, my name is Andrew Toh and I work as a business analyst in a bank here in Singapore. And in the finance industry, we use a lot of Excel. So I would also like to share with you my favorite shortcuts, and if you use Excel frequently, I hope this video helps you. So why we should care about Excel shortcuts is because many corporate jobs today still use Microsoft Excel to store data, analyze data, and share data through emails. So knowing how to use Excel shortcuts means that we can get our jobs done more efficiently. And secondly, using keyboard shortcuts means that we can relieve ourselves from the mental pressure and effort of trying to find things in Excel every single time we want to do a specific function, so we have to go and click around on the ribbons just to find it. But using keyboard shortcuts means that we can do it without touching the mouse. And the third reason is with keyboard shortcuts, we can also impress people when we are sharing the spreadsheet with someone else side by side, and we can navigate across the spreadsheet fairly quickly using just the keyboard or the combination of keyboard and the mouse, and we can execute functions as quickly as we think of them so that we can spend less time fumbling around looking for things and actually more time digesting and interpreting what the data actually means. There are a lot of guides on the internet about Excel shortcuts, such as the top 10 Excel shortcuts that you must know, but generally I don't find them that useful because like Excel has hundreds and thousands of different ways you can use it, and there are some shortcuts that may or may not be useful. So I would like to share with you a framework that I found really useful to help me speed up my own workflow, and I call it the OFP, the over freaking powered observe, find and practice. So basically what it means is that for O, we should observe our actions and look at how we use Excel. How often do we repeat ourselves? How often do we repeat certain actions from time to time? Chances are those actions have a keyboard shortcut associated with it. And secondly, we should also look at how often we touch the mouse and move the mouse. And when we move the mouse, we are usually trying to click on something like this. And most of these functions also have a keyboard shortcut associated with it. So once we've observed the actions that we keep repeating over time, the next step is to find the shortcuts associated with it. And there are generally two ways to find a shortcut. Either we Google them or we use access keys, which I'll show you later on. So for example, if I want to find a keyboard shortcut on how to save in Excel, then I can just simply type in Google Excel and save and keyboard shortcut. And most of the time, the first result would be the answer. And the second way to find a shortcut is to use the alternate tool. So when we are in Excel, whenever we hit the alternate key here in the keyboard, notice that we have icons popping up at the top of the bar. And in each of these icons, there are letters in it. So whenever we press the letter on the keyboard, it is equivalent to clicking on it. So for example, if I press H, then it will open the Home tab, and I can open up a sub-menu of this. Later on, I will show you a lot of keyboard shortcuts that would be using this alternate tool, and some of which can also be found on Google. And the third step is that once we've found those shortcuts, we basically practice these shortcuts from time to time again. Whenever we recall that, hey, I've already thought of a shortcut for this, I would try it out so that I become familiar with it. Well, the reality is that most of these shortcuts are not very intuitive. They are usually made up of some weird key combinations of stuff, except for Ctrl S, which is almost universal for saving the file. But most other keyboard shortcuts are just made up of some random letters. So practicing them from time to time will make us more familiar with them. And as we repeat this OFP framework, we'll gradually find the areas in Excel where we can find the shortcuts to speed up our workflow and hopefully become more productive at work. So let me show you the common keyboard shortcuts that I use, and I divide them into two categories. The first category is navigation, which is getting around data sets, and the second has to do with editing and manipulating the data in the table. So over here on the computer screen, I've just downloaded a data set for HDB prices, or the public housing prices for the past few years. And usually when the data set comes to us at first, we will see that all the columns are of the same width. So what I used to do before I knew about keyboard shortcuts is that I would straighten out the columns using my mouse like this. Or when I got a bit smarter, I decided to select the whole table, something like this, and I'll go to Format and hit Column, Auto Fit Column Width. So now I'm just going to hit Undo and show you the keyboard shortcut for this. So in any part of this table, whenever we hit Ctrl A, we will be selecting the entire data set and the columns too. So we're going to use the access keys here to mimic the steps that we would do otherwise with the mouse. So when we hit alternate, notice that there are icons popping up, and when we hit H, we would enable the submenu of H. And what we're looking for is under format, which stands for O, and then we'll go for auto fit column width, which is I. And there we go, we have it automatically done for us. So if I were to do it at full speed, I would just be basically typing out alternate HOI, HOI, like this. And notice that the application is slightly slower than how fast I typed it. This shows the power of keyboard shortcuts because it shows that we can actually become faster than the application itself if we know our ways around the access keys. Next, when it comes to navigating around the dataset, usually you can use the scroll wheel like this and scroll down like this, but as you can see, this is a huge data set. I don't know how many thousands of rows there are, and the scroll bar isn't exactly that useful anymore. So if I just want to get a quick sense and quick glance at how the data set looks like, there are a couple of keyboard shortcuts for me to look at it fairly quickly. So I can use the Ctrl down to go to the last value of the table, and go Ctrl left and right as well, just to get a sense of what's going on. Similarly, I can also use page up or page down to shift the entire view down. So I'm using my keyboard on my laptop here, and I don't have a full-size keyboard. Otherwise, I would have the page up and page down buttons, which I can just press. So on this laptop keyboard, I need to hold down Shift to enable this multi-purpose key, which stands for page down, or the number 3. So as I go page down, I can quickly glance at what's going on, a little quicker compared to the mouse. And often we will have multiple tabs in a single spreadsheet, which contains different data sets. So the keyboard shortcut for me to navigate around that is to hit Ctrl Page Down. Now again, because I'm on my laptop, I need to hold the Shift key. So page down to go 1 to the right, and page up to go to the left. So that is much quicker in my opinion compared to dragging the mouse down to the bottom of the tab and just clicking around like this. I think it's much faster if I just can cycle through. And there will be later a formula which I'll be showing you on how we can use this keyboard shortcut to browse between tabs to write a cross-referencing formula much quicker. Next, I'll be showing you how we can do some quick data analysis on a column. So this is especially useful for columns with numbers like this, for example, the resale price. And when I hit Ctrl Space, I will be highlighting the entire column, and notice that at the bottom right-hand corner, Excel has a built-in data descriptive statistics here to tell me what's the average, what's the count, and what's the sum. So on average, the prices in Singapore for HDB is about $451,611. That's pretty expensive. So most of the time, I will be using filters to understand what's going on in the table like this. So for example, I want to look for Sengkang flats and only the 4-room types. So I can just look for the filter key, which is under data, and hit filter like this. Or I can just hit alternate A and T for filter to turn it off, and alternate AT to turn it on again. And this is one of my favorite filters because AT stands for Andrew Toh. So whenever I see a table dataset like this, I can just go alternate AT, turn filters on and off, and I'll be speaking to myself at the same time. And so after enabling the filters, what most people do is to use their mouse and click on these down arrows to look for what they're looking for. So let's say I want to look for Sengkang like this, and there we go, we have Sengkang units. Or we can use keyboard shortcut, and the keyboard shortcut to activate the drop down of these filters is alternate down. So let's say I just want to look for my good old 4-room flats. I don't want 5-room. 5 rooms are too expensive. 3 rooms are too small. So I'll hit alternate down like this, and I'll press E to enable this search bar, and I can just type 4-room like this and hit enter. Or alternatively, I can just hit E again and press the down arrow to cycle through these options and use the space bar to check and uncheck the boxes as I like. So I usually use this combination, and there we go, we have all of the Sengkang 4-room flats. And one more tip that I like to use is the go to, which is opened up by Ctrl G. So I can literally go to a cell reference, and this is very useful when I'm going through a spreadsheet with someone else over the phone call. So if someone wants to tell me where exactly they are pinpointing in the table, I will simply ask them, tell me what's the cell reference. So if they say look at I2, then I can just key in I2. and hit enter, and so the cell will immediately highlight the part that someone is telling me about. So I think that's really useful, so I don't have to squint my eyes and struggle to find the cell with the value that they're looking for, especially when there are so many numbers and words on the same screen. So the next set of shortcuts comes down to editing and manipulating the data. So let's say in this data, I just want to compute the average price per square feet. So I would create a column by highlighting the entire column first and hit Ctrl Shift plus. So I can just type PSF and I can take the resale price divided by the square meter here. Now I gotta convert this into square feet. So if I look at Google, it tells me that I need to divide it by the factor of 10.769. So I will copy that and paste it back into the cell. Now normally you can use the mouse and just click on the cell like this and click on the formula bar like this. But there's a much quicker way to do that. You can use the shortcut F2, which would enable the editing of the cell. So in this case, I've made a mistake. I need to put in the square brackets in the denominator so that it will divide by 10.769 accordingly. So I'm going to do right there and hit F2, and notice that I can start editing in the formula itself without even touching the mouse. So I just put in my brackets here like this, and brackets here like this, and enter. Great. So now I gotta change it to $sign. So I just hit alternate home, and $sign stands for AN, and I'll just hit enter Singapore for English. And now I gotta copy down the formula. So traditionally you can just highlight the cells, holding down Shift to hit all the cells, and hit Ctrl D to copy down the formula. But now we have such a huge data set, we can use the keyboard navigation shortcut that we learned earlier, which is to hit Ctrl down to go to the last value at the bottom. You can see it's the last value. These are all empty rows. And go to this cell and hit Ctrl Shift up to highlight all the cells and go to the topmost cell too. And after that, I will just hit the magical Ctrl D, which will copy down the entire formula. And there we have the per square feet calculated. Now, if I want to remove columns, let's say I don't need this flat border because I don't really care what a flat border is and I don't really understand what those are, hit Ctrl minus to take out the entire column. Okay, so let me show you something a bit more complicated, which is to write a formula that refers to another data in another tab, which is essentially a VLOOKUP. So let's say I want to look for the maximum floor of these blocks in Sengkang, and I found another dataset from datagov.sg, and these are the maximum floors over here. Now I want to pull the dataset over to the other side, and I can't use a VLOOKUP over here because what I'm trying to look up, which is this floor, max floor, is on the left hand side of this unique identifier here that I just created. So I need to use index match, and if you haven't heard of that formula, I will leave a link in the video description below. So I'm going to do this at full speed, and first I'm going to create my unique identifier, and street equals to my block and street name here. Okay, there we go, and I'm going to straighten things out here, and I'm going to put in my max floor here, which I'm going to use the index formula for this column. F4 to lock in the cell so that it doesn't move when I copy it down. Match my identifier here with the identifier that I just built here to lock the cell, exact match, close bracket for the match formula and close bracket for the index formula. And there we go, we have 15 floor for this block, and we can verify this by looking at block 324D for Sengkang East Way. Yes, there we go, 15 floor, and I'm just going to copy down the formula, and these are the results that we have by using just a keyboard. Okay, so one more task is, let's say I want to find the unique number of blocks in Sengkang for these 4-room flats. So I have my block column over here, and I simply just need to remove the duplicates from this data set. But I don't want to do it here in this table because it would mess up the table. So to do that, I would simply create a new tab and do my analysis over there. So first, I would copy this column, and I would create a new tab, which Google tells me it's Shift 11, and I would paste the column over here. Next, I would hit Ctrl Shift down to just select these cells, and I would go to remove duplicates, which is under the data tab over here. But I can simply use the access keys tool, which I've already memorized it because I've done it for so many times, which is alternate AM, which will open up this remove duplicates here. Again, we can see it's alternate, A for data, M to remove duplicates over here, and we hit the right arrow key 2 times, pop, to go to the OK and press OK. And there we go, we have 52 minus 1 for the header. We have 51 unique blocks that have transacted for all the forum units in the past few years. Well, there's not many blocks to choose from, and I hope that I can find a good unit soon. So after learning so many keyboard shortcuts, does it mean that we don't need to use the mouse anymore? Well, not exactly, because we still need to have our hand on the mouse most of the time when we are interacting with other applications like our emails and going into folders and clicking onto something else on screen. And some other applications don't necessarily have the keyboard shortcuts that we have on Excel, and they are not exactly the same. So most of the time, we will have our left hand on the keyboard and the right hand on the mouse. And there are still some functions on the mouse that is better than the keyboard. So for example, let's say in the data set here, for this $sign, I want to get rid of the 2 decimal points. Well, if I were to use the keyboard, I would need to go to alternate, home, and press 9 to shorten the decimals. And I need to do that again, alternate H9. But if I were to use my mouse and click on this, my mouse clicking speed at least is faster than hitting alternate H9, which is slower compared to the mouse. And one more advantage that the mouse has over the keyboard is that whenever I want to select a word and I want to copy it and do something with it, I can simply double click on it. So if I were to use a keyboard, it will be slightly slower because I need to hit F2 and I need to go all the way to that word and hit Ctrl Shift arrow before I can copy it. But using the mouse, I can just simply double click what I want and just pinpoint exactly to what I need. And using the mouse also allows us to more precisely find the cell that we're looking for. And using the arrow keys is like we have to go a few times before we can actually get to the cell. And using the mouse obviously is much faster because we can just simply look with our eyes and just click on that cell. And I can also even use a combination of my left and right hand. So for example, let's say I want to delete this spreadsheet over here because I don't need this anymore. So what we can do is to just simply right click and hit D for delete. So notice that some letters are underlined, so it means that when I press on the letter on my keyboard, it is also as good as clicking on that. So when I press D, I can simply delete it. So one more time, if I just right click, hit D, I can just simply click delete or hit enter. Another common tool that I use for both my left and right hand is when I want to format a cell like this. So let's say I want to change this into something else, I can just right click and hit F for format over here. So I can just do this like this. And I can change this number to 2 decimal points. I might even want to add a 1000 separator like this so it looks a bit nicer. And I can just copy that to other cells, selecting the whole thing, and right click and press R for formatting, because as we can see over here, R stands for formatting, so we're basically pasting the format on other cells like this. So how I learned about all these keyboard shortcuts is because when I was young, I used to play computer games, and one of the first computer games that I played is Counter-Strike, which uses both my left and right hand, and we're just going around to shoot at things. And in that game, speed is of essence, and the split second could mean that you either kill or you get killed. So I use a lot of keyboard shortcuts, and we all use keyboard shortcuts, right, to get around, to switch our weapons, and to throw the grenade and do all sorts of things as quickly as we can. And this has trickled down into my work because I now use both my left and right hand to get things done much quicker. So let me know in the comments below on what other Excel tips and tricks you find useful, and if you want me to do a separate video on how I rank these shortcuts in terms of importance and how useful I find them from time to time, let me know in the comments below too, and I hope to see you in my next video.